The cargo hauler Steadfast drifted dead in space, its hull torn open like a metal flower. Emergency lights blinked weakly in the darkness while debris scattered in all directions. David Reed floated unconscious near what used to be the navigation console, blood seeping from a cut on his forehead. When he woke up, metal restraints held his wrists and ankles. The room around him looked nothing like his ship. Smooth purple walls curved upward and strange symbols glowed along the ceiling. The air smelled wrong, too clean with a metallic taste that made his throat burn. Another human. The voice came from somewhere above him. David looked up to see a creature he had never imagined possible. It stood on two legs like a person, but its skin looked like blue-black stone. Four arms moved independently as it examined a glowing tablet. Weak species. Good for entertainment only. David tried to speak, but his throat felt raw. The creature noticed his movement and walked closer. Its face had too many eyes, 6 of them, all different colors, studying him like he was some kind of interesting bug. "I am Overseer Voss," the creature said. Its voice sounded like grinding metal. "You are now property of the Galactic Entertainment Consortium. Your ship attacked our patrol vessels. The penalty is death by combat." "Wait," David managed to croak. "My ship was hauling medical supplies to the outer colonies. We never attacked anyone." Voss made a sound that might have been laughter. "Pirates attacked you first. Then they sold you to us. The details do not matter. You will fight in the arena. You will die. The crowd will be entertained." The restraints released with a soft click. David rubbed his wrists and tried to stand, but his legs felt weak. Voss gestured toward a doorway that had not been there moments before. "Move. Other prisoners wait below." David stumbled through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Strange beings in similar restraints walked ahead and behind him, all heading in the same direction. Some looked almost human except for extra arms or different colored skin. Others defied any description, floating blobs of energy, creatures made of what looked like living crystal, things with too many legs and not enough heads. The corridor ended at a massive elevator that could have held 100 people. Everyone crowded inside without speaking. David found himself pressed against a creature that looked like a 7-foot-tall insect wearing armor. Its compound eyes reflected his face dozens of times. "First time in the arena?" the insect asked. Its voice buzzed like an old radio. "I hope so," David replied. "I am Razor. I have fought 12 times. This will be my 13th. How are you still alive?" Razor's mandibles clicked together. "Skill. Luck. The crowd enjoys watching me kill smaller opponents. But soon they will want to see me die. All gladiators face the devourer eventually." The elevator stopped with a gentle bump. The doors opened to reveal an underground complex that took David's breath away. Dozens of levels stretched down into darkness, connected by bridges and walkways. Cells lined every wall, each one holding a different prisoner. The sound of hundreds of voices echoed off the metal surfaces. Guards led David through a maze of corridors to a small cell. Inside, he found a simple bed, a waste unit, and a water dispenser. "Nothing else. You fight in 3 days," one of the guards said. It looked like Voss, but smaller, with only 2 arms. "Use the time to prepare. Not that it will help." The cell door sealed shut with a soft hum. David sat on the bed and tried to understand what had happened. 2 days ago, he was delivering medicine to people who needed it. Now he was trapped on some alien space station, waiting to die for the entertainment of creatures he had never seen before. Through the small window in his cell door, he could see other prisoners moving around a common area. Most sat alone, staring at nothing. A few talked quietly in groups. None of them looked happy. David pressed his face against the window and tried to see more of the complex. Far above, he could make out what looked like stadium seating. Bright lights moved back and forth like spotlights. Occasionally, a loud roar echoed down from that direction, followed by cheering that made his skin crawl. Someone knocked on his door. David looked up to see another prisoner standing outside, a woman who looked completely human except for silver eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. "New arrival?" she asked when David opened the small communication slot. David Reed. "And yes, very new. I am called Luna. I have been here 6 months. Would you like some advice? I would appreciate any help you can give me." Luna glanced around to make sure no guards were watching. "The arena has rules. Learn them fast. The crowd decides if you live or die after each fight. Make them remember you. Be brave, be clever, or be entertaining. Boring fighters die quickly. What about this devourer that Razor mentioned? Luna's expression darkened. The final test. A bioweapon created by the consortium scientists. It has killed every challenger for the past 2 years. No one survives the devourer. What does it look like? Different every time. It adapts, it learns. It was designed to be the perfect killer. Luna stepped closer to the window. But here is what the others do not know. I have watched every devourer fight from the prisoner viewing area. It has one weakness. What kind of weakness? It expects its opponents to be afraid. Fear makes them predictable. The devourer was programmed to counter every response except one. Which is? Luna smiled, and for the first time since waking up on this nightmare station, David felt a tiny spark of hope. It has never fought someone who refused to be afraid. The betting hall buzzed with activity as hundreds of alien species gathered around holographic displays. Numbers flashed in dozens of languages, while creatures David could not identify placed wagers on the upcoming fights. He watched from the prisoner observation deck, trying to understand the system that would decide his fate. They are not betting on who wins, Razor explained, pointing at the displays with one of his forearms. They bet on how long each fighter will last. Look at your odds. David found his name on the list. The longest survival time anyone had bet on was 45 seconds. Most predictions clustered around 20 to 30 seconds. One particularly optimistic gambler had wagered he might last a full minute, but the odds were 1,000 to 1 against. Why so short? David asked. Humans have a reputation, Luna said quietly. She had joined them on the observation deck, along with several other prisoners who seemed interested in the new arrival. The galaxy sees your species as weak. No natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. You rely too much on tools and technology. A massive creature that looked like a walking boulder overheard them. I am called Stone, it rumbled in a voice like an avalanche. I have fought here for 2 years. I have seen 3 humans enter the arena. The longest survived 28 seconds. What happened to them? David asked. They ran. They screamed. They begged. Stone's rocky face showed what might have been sympathy. Your species lacks the warrior spirit. This is not shameful. Many species are not meant for combat. Down in the betting hall, a new group of spectators arrived. David recognized Overseer Voss among them, along with several other officials in elaborate robes. They moved through the crowd like celebrities, stopping to examine the odds and place their own bets. Voss never bets, Razor observed, but today he has wagered a significant sum on your fight. Betting against me, I assume. No. He has bet that you will last exactly 15 seconds. He seems very confident about this. Luna frowned. That is unusual. Voss does not normally care about individual fights unless something important is at stake. They watched as Voss approached one of the main displays and pointed at David's image. The overseer spoke to his companions in a language David did not recognize, but their body language suggested they were planning something specific. I need to understand what makes them so certain, David said. Can you show me recordings of previous human fighters? Razor's compound eyes focused on him. The prisoners are allowed access to the arena archives. Follow me. They left the observation deck and walked deeper into the complex. The archive room contained dozens of viewing stations where prisoners could study their upcoming opponents. Most of the stations showed recordings of various arena creatures, massive predators, bioweapons, and mechanical killing machines. Razor activated one of the stations and pulled up recordings of the 3 previous human fighters. David watched each fight carefully, taking notes on a small tablet the station provided. The first human, a young man named Peter, had faced a creature called a razor claw. The beast looked like a metal wolf with blades instead of fur. Peter had tried to run as soon as the fight began. The razor claw caught him in 12 seconds and ended the fight quickly. The second human, a woman called Maria, fought something called a venom striker. She had attempted to negotiate with the creature, apparently not understanding that it was a mindless bioweapon. The striker killed her in 28 seconds while she was still trying to talk to it. The third human, an older man named Robert, faced a shock beast that generated electricity. Robert had grabbed a piece of debris and tried to use it as a weapon, but the creature's electrical field disabled him in 18 seconds. They all made the same mistake, David said after watching all 3 recordings twice. What mistake? Luna asked. They fought like humans instead of thinking like humans. Stone leaned closer. Explain this. Peter ran because humans are not naturally fast. Maria tried to communicate because humans solve problems through talking. Robert used a tool because humans rely on technology, but none of them adapted to the situation they were actually in. And what situation is that? Razor wanted to know. David pointed at the screen. They were not fighting wild animals or enemy soldiers. They were performing for an audience that expected them to fail in a specific way. The crowd was not watching a fight. They were watching a confirmation of their beliefs about human weakness. He pulled up additional recordings, studying the arena layout and the crowd reactions. Look at how the audience responds. They cheer when a human acts afraid. They get excited when we use tools instead of our natural abilities. They are not just entertaining themselves, they are reinforcing their own prejudices. Luna nodded slowly. You think Voss has a reason for wanting humans to appear weak? I think this is bigger than entertainment. Someone wants the galaxy to believe humans are not a threat. David spent the next several hours studying everything he could about the arena. The fighting space was circular, about 50 meters across with energy barriers preventing escape. The floor could be adjusted to different terrains: sand, rock, metal grating, or smooth crystal. Weapons were sometimes provided, but fighters could not rely on them being available. More importantly, he studied the audience. Representatives from dozens of species attended the fights, including government officials, military leaders, and wealthy merchants. The arena was not just entertainment, it was a social gathering where important decisions got made. There will be someone important watching your fight, Stone observed. Voss has been making arrangements all day. Special seating has been prepared for a delegation from the Galactic Council. What does the Galactic Council want with a human fighting in the arena? Perhaps they want to see for themselves whether humans deserve protection under interspecies law, Luna suggested. There has been debate about this recently. Some species want to include humans in the protected class. Others argue that humans are too primitive. David felt a chill run down his spine. His fight was not just about his own survival. It was a demonstration designed to influence galactic policy toward his entire species. What creature will I face? He asked. Razor checked the official schedule. You will fight a standard razor claw first. If you survive that, the crowd may demand a second fight. And if I survive the second fight, then you face the Devourer. David looked at the recordings one more time. Every human fighter had been reacting to their situation instead of controlling it. They had let their opponents and the crowd dictate the terms of engagement. He was going to do something different. I need to change how this game is played, he said quietly. What do you mean? Luna asked. I mean the crowd expects me to fail like a human, so I will succeed like a human instead. Sleep refused to come. David lay on his narrow bed staring at the ceiling while his mind raced through everything he had learned. Tomorrow he would face the Razor Claw, but his real concern was the creature that came after, if he lived long enough to meet it. The Devourer. Even its name was designed to inspire fear. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Luna stood outside his cell holding a data tablet and looking worried. I brought something that might help, she said when he opened the communication slot. Archive footage of every Devourer fight from the past 2 years. I thought you should see what you are really up against. David accepted the tablet gratefully. Why are you helping me? Because I have been here 6 months and you are the first person who thinks we might actually have a chance. The tablet contained 47 recordings. David started with the most recent and worked backward, taking careful notes about everything he observed. The Devourer was not just one creature. It was a shape-shifting bioweapon that adapted to each opponent. Against fast opponents, it became heavily armored and patient, waiting for them to exhaust themselves. Against strong opponents, it became quick and agile, striking from unexpected angles. Against clever opponents who tried to use strategy, it became unpredictable and chaotic. But there was a pattern underneath the adaptations. The creature always waited for its opponent to reveal their primary strength, then countered that strength with overwhelming force. It was designed to be the perfect predator, capable of defeating any fighting style. David watched the recording of fight number 31 more carefully. The opponent was a creature called a Mind Weaver, capable of limited telepathy. The Mind Weaver had tried to confuse the Devourer with mental illusions, making multiple copies of itself. The Devourer had paused for exactly 4 seconds. then grown additional sensory organs and tracked the real Mindweaver by scent instead of sight. The fight ended in 12 seconds. It learns too fast, David muttered. He continued through the recordings, paying special attention to the moments when each opponent revealed their strategy. The Devourer never took longer than 5 seconds to develop a counter-strategy. Its creators had built the perfect learning machine. Fight number 18 showed something interesting. The opponent was a creature that fought purely on instinct with no strategy at all. The Devourer had struggled with this for nearly 30 seconds before finally overwhelming the creature through sheer physical power. It expects its opponents to be intelligent, David realized. When they act on pure instinct, it takes longer to adapt. But that was not enough. Acting on instinct would only delay the inevitable. He needed something more. David went back to the first recorded fight and watched it again. The Devourer's initial form was always the same, a sleek black creature about 8 feet tall with retractable claws and enhanced muscles. This was its baseline configuration before it adapted to each opponent. More importantly, the arena itself never changed during Devourer fights. The floor remained flat metal grating with no weapons provided. The energy barriers were set to maximum strength, preventing any possibility of escape. They want the fight to be pure, David said to himself. Predator versus prey with no outside factors. He studied the arena layout in detail. The fighting space was perfectly circular, 50 meters across. The energy barriers rose 20 meters high before curving inward to form a dome. Spectator seating surrounded the arena in ascending tiers, with the most important guests seated in the front row. The floor grating was designed for drainage and easy cleaning. Beneath it lay the arena's power systems, including the gravity generators that could be adjusted during certain types of fights. But during Devourer matches, gravity remained at standard galactic norm. David made notes about sightlines, distances, and timing. If he could last longer than 30 seconds, he would break the previous record. If he could last longer than a minute, he would shock the entire galaxy. But his goal was not just to survive longer. His goal was to win. A guard appeared outside his cell. "Time for final preparations," it announced. "Come with me." David followed the guard through corridors he had not seen before. They passed medical facilities, equipment storage, and what looked like a small temple where some prisoners were praying to various gods. The preparation chamber contained basic exercise equipment and a food dispenser. David was not hungry, but he forced himself to eat anyway. His body would need all the energy it could get. "You have 1 hour," the guard said. "Then you go to the ready chamber." David used the time to stretch and review his notes one final time. The Devourer had defeated 47 opponents using adaptation and overwhelming force, but every system had weaknesses, even perfect ones. The creature was designed to counter strategies, but what if his strategy was to have no strategy? The recordings showed it struggled against pure instinct, but David was not going to rely on instinct alone. He was going to do something the Devourer had never encountered. Before, he was going to make the creature adapt to something that could not be countered. Another guard arrived to escort him to the ready chamber. This room was smaller, with a single chair facing a large screen that showed the arena. The crowd was already gathering, filling the seats with creatures from across the galaxy. David could see the special section reserved for the Galactic Council delegation. 3 beings in elaborate robes sat in the front row, watching the preparations with obvious interest. Overseer Voss stood nearby, speaking to them in what appeared to be an animated conversation. "Nervous?" asked a familiar voice. Razor had been brought to the ready chamber as well. Apparently he was fighting in the preliminary matches. "Focused," David replied. "Good. Fear clouds the mind. But do not become overconfident. The razor claw you face first is not intelligent, but it is fast and deadly. Its claws can cut through most armor. Any advice? Stay moving. It attacks in straight lines, so lateral movement confuses it. And remember, the crowd must be entertained. If they become bored, they will demand your death regardless of your performance." The screen showed arena workers making final preparations. The metal grating gleamed under bright lights while energy barriers hummed to life. In a few minutes, David would step into that space and fight for his life. But more than his life was at stake. The outcome of his fight would influence how the galaxy viewed humanity for generations to come. If he failed like the others, humans would remain a protected species at best, considered too weak to be taken seriously. If he succeeded, everything would change. David closed his eyes and ran through his plan one more time. It was risky, probably suicidal and completely insane. It was also the most human thing he could imagine doing. "Time to go," the guard announced. David stood up and walked toward the arena entrance. Through the walls, he could hear the crowd cheering as they anticipated another demonstration of human weakness. They were about to be very surprised. The arena entrance sealed behind David with a sound like thunder. He stood in a small chamber, listening to the roar of the crowd above. Through a narrow window, he could see the fighting space, 50 meters of metal grating under blazing lights. An announcer's voice boomed through speakers in a dozen languages. David recognized a few words in standard galactic: human, weak, and entertainment. The crowd responded with sounds that might have been laughter. Across the arena, another entrance opened. The Razor Claw emerged slowly, testing the air with sensitive whiskers. It looked exactly like the recordings, a metallic wolf the size of a small vehicle with claws that gleamed like polished steel. "Fighters ready," the announcer declared. "Let the trial begin." Both entrance doors burst open simultaneously. The Razor Claw charged immediately, covering the distance between them with frightening speed. Its claws sparked against the metal grating as it built momentum for a killing strike. David stood perfectly still. The crowd fell silent. This was not what they expected. Previous human fighters had run, screamed, or tried to dodge. None had simply waited for death to arrive. At the last possible second, David took one step to his left. The Razor Claw shot past him, unable to change direction quickly enough. It slammed into the energy barrier with a sound like breaking glass, then rolled across the grating in a tangle of legs and claws. David remained motionless, watching the creature recover. The crowd was murmuring now, confused by what they had witnessed. The Razor Claw shook itself and turned around, more cautious this time. It began to circle David, looking for an opening. Its metal whiskers twitched as it analyzed this strange prey that refused to run. David turned slowly, keeping the creature in sight, but made no aggressive moves. He was not trying to attack or escape. He was studying his opponent, learning its patterns, waiting for the right moment. The crowd grew restless. They had come to see a quick execution, not a careful dance. Some began calling for action, demanding that the human do something interesting before he died. The Razor Claw attacked again, this time approaching from an angle. David waited until the last moment, then stepped aside with minimal movement. The creature's claws missed him by inches. "Fight!" someone screamed from the spectator section. This is boring, but David was not fighting the Razor Claw. He was fighting the expectations of everyone watching. Every second he survived was proof that humans were not as weak as the galaxy believed. The creature tried a different approach, feinting left before attacking from the right. David read the movement and avoided it easily. The Razor Claw was fast and deadly, but it was also predictable. It had been bred for killing, not thinking. Minutes passed. The crowd's confusion turned to fascination as they realized they were watching something unprecedented. This human was not cowering or begging. He was demonstrating a kind of courage none of them had imagined possible. In the special seating area, Overseer Voss looked increasingly uncomfortable. His carefully planned demonstration was not going according to schedule. The Razor Claw was growing frustrated. It made a series of rapid attacks, trying to overwhelm David through sheer aggression. Each time David moved just enough to avoid the claws, never wasting energy on unnecessary movement. Then he did something that made the entire arena gasp. He stopped moving entirely and stared directly into the Razor Claw's eyes. The creature paused, confused by this behavior. In its simple mind, prey animals that stopped running were either dead or about to die, but this human showed no signs of injury or exhaustion. David took one step forward. The Razor Claw backed away, uncertain. This was completely outside its programmed responses. Prey animals did not advance on predators. David took another step forward, maintaining eye contact. His heart was racing, but his face remained calm. He was betting everything on his understanding of animal psychology. The Razor Claw made a final desperate charge. David waited until the creature was committed to its attack, then dropped to one knee and rolled sideways. The beast's own momentum carried it past him and into the energy barrier again. This time David did not wait for it to recover. He sprinted to where the creature lay stunned and placed his hand on its head just behind the ears. The crowd erupted. Never in the history of the arena had they seen a human touch a dangerous predator without being killed instantly. David spoke quietly to the razor claw, words the crowd could not hear. The creature's eyes focused on him, its breathing slowing from aggressive panting to something calmer. "I am not your enemy," David said softly. "You were created to kill, but you were not created to choose who dies. That choice is mine." The razor claw made a sound that was almost like a whimper. For the first time in its engineered life, it was experiencing something other than hunger and aggression. David stood up and walked away from the creature. It remained where it was, watching him with something that might have been curiosity instead of hatred. The arena fell completely silent. No one knew what to do with what they had just witnessed. The announcer's voice crackled over the speakers. "The human has defeated the razor claw without killing it. This is unprecedented." Overseer Voss activated his communicator and spoke rapidly to someone off stage. David could not hear the conversation, but he could see the official's anger and frustration. "The crowd demands a second trial," the announcer declared. "Bring forth the shock beast." Another entrance opened. The shock beast emerged, a creature covered in bioelectric organs that could generate lethal charges. It was larger than the razor claw and far more dangerous. David looked up at the spectator section and found the delegation from the Galactic Council. 3 beings in elaborate robes were leaning forward in their seats, studying him with obvious interest. He smiled and nodded to them. Then he turned to face the shock beast with the same calm expression he had shown the razor claw. The creature advanced, electricity arcing between its spines. The crowd held its breath, waiting to see if the human's strange magic would work twice. David stood perfectly still as the beast approached. At the last moment, he stepped aside with the same minimal movement he had used before. But this time, he did something different. As the shock beast passed him, David reached out and touched one of its electrical spines. The crowd screamed, certain they were about to watch him die from electrocution. Instead, David remained standing. The electricity flowed through him harmlessly. He had grounded himself against the metal grating, using the arena's own structure to disperse the charge. The shock beast stopped and turned around, confused. Its primary weapon had failed completely. David walked calmly to the center of the arena and sat down cross-legged on the metal grating. He closed his eyes and began to meditate, completely ignoring the deadly creature circling him. The message was clear. He was not afraid of anything they could send against him. The crowd was going wild. Some cheered his incredible bravery, others demanded his immediate death for making a mockery of their entertainment. The noise was deafening. Overseer Voss stood up in his special section and activated the arena's communication system. "Enough," his voice boomed across the fighting space. "Bring forth the Devourer." A new section of the arena floor opened. From the depths below, a platform rose carrying the most terrifying creature David had ever seen. The Devourer was exactly as the recordings had shown. 8 feet of sleek black death with retractable claws and muscles that moved like liquid metal under its skin. The crowd fell silent again. Everyone knew what the Devourer represented. It was the ultimate test, the creature that had never been defeated. David opened his eyes and looked at his final opponent. The beast stared back with intelligence that was both alien and unmistakably hostile. This would be different from the other fights. The Devourer was not just a predator. It was a weapon designed specifically to kill anything that threatened it. David stood up slowly and faced the creature that would determine the fate of his entire species. The cage burst open, the beast charged, and the human did not flinch. The Devourer hit the arena floor running. Its claws extended automatically as bioengineered instincts took control. Every fiber of its being was focused on one goal: kill the human in the most efficient way possible. David watched the creature approach and felt time slow to a crawl. Everything he had learned, every observation he had made, every plan he had formed came together in this single moment. The beast was 3 meters away when David did something no opponent had ever attempted before. He sat down. The Devourer's charge faltered as its combat programming struggled to process this response. Prey animals fled or fought back. They did not simply sit and wait for death. David crossed his legs and placed his hands on his knees, maintaining perfect eye contact with the creature. His breathing remained steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. The Devourer circled him slowly, its adaptive systems analyzing this unprecedented behavior. Every few seconds it would pause and tilt its head, as if listening to internal instructions that made no sense. The crowd was dead silent. Even the announcer seemed too shocked to speak. David began to talk. Not to the crowd or to himself, but directly to the devourer. "You were created to be perfect," he said quietly. "Faster than any prey, stronger than any predator, smarter than any opponent. Your makers designed you to counter every possible strategy." The creature stopped circling and crouched in front of him, confused by the calm voice and lack of aggressive movement. "But they made one mistake," David continued. "They assumed every strategy was based on fear. They programmed you to defeat opponents who wanted to live." The devourer's head tilted further. Its adaptive systems were working overtime, trying to categorize this strange behavior into a recognizable threat pattern. "I am not afraid of you," David said. "I am not trying to escape. I am not planning to attack you. I am simply refusing to participate in the game your creators designed." In the spectator section, Overseer Voss was frantically speaking into his communicator. The Galactic Council delegation leaned forward in their seats, studying every detail of what was happening below. The devourer made its first attack, a tentative swipe with one claw that would have opened David's chest if it had connected. David did not move or flinch. The claw stopped inches from his skin. "You can kill me easily," David acknowledged, "but killing me will not prove anything except that sharp claws can cut soft flesh. Everyone already knows that." The creature's bioengineered brain was overheating. Its programming demanded that it respond to threats, but this human was not behaving like a threat. He was behaving like something the devourer had never encountered before, a completely fearless opponent. David stood up slowly, keeping his movements calm and deliberate. The devourer backed away, its adaptive systems unable to predict what would happen next. "Your creators wanted you to be the perfect predator," David said, taking a step toward the creature. "But they forgot that the perfect predator needs prey that acts like prey." He took another step. The devourer retreated again, its confusion growing with each passing second. "I am not prey," David declared, his voice carrying clearly across the silent arena. "I am a human being. We do not flee from superior force. We do not surrender to impossible odds. We do not accept defeat simply because logic says we should lose." The creature tried to process this information, but its programming had no response for an opponent who refused to acknowledge the possibility of failure. David reached out slowly and touched the devourer's forehead, just as he had done with the razor claw. The creature froze, every muscle locked in place as its systems crashed, trying to understand what was happening. "You were designed to be unbeatable," David said softly, "but you were not designed to understand the one thing that makes humans dangerous." The arena held its collective breath as man and monster stood face to face, connected by a simple touch that should have resulted in instant death. "We refuse to believe that anything is unbeatable." The devourer made a sound that was part growl, part electronic whine. Its adaptive systems were locked in a feedback loop, trying to counter a strategy that was not actually a strategy. David stepped back and smiled. "Thank you for the lesson." He turned his back on the creature and walked toward the center of the arena. The crowd erupted. Half of them were cheering for the incredible display of courage they had just witnessed. The other half were screaming for David's blood, outraged that their ultimate entertainment had been turned into something they could not understand. But the devourer did not attack. It stood where David had left it, systems still locked in their impossible loop, unable to function without an opponent who followed the rules of engagement. Overseer Voss leaped to his feet and activated the arena's emergency protocols. "Kill the human," he shouted into his communicator. "Override the creature's programming and kill him now." But it was too late. The damage was done. Every camera in the arena had recorded David's impossible victory. The footage was already being transmitted across the galaxy through faster-than-light communication networks. Within hours, beings on thousands of worlds would see a human face down the most dangerous creature in known space and win through pure force of will. In the prisoner sections, humans who had been scheduled for their own arena deaths were watching the monitors with growing amazement. One by one, they began to stand up straighter, their despair replaced by something far more dangerous: hope. Luna gripped the observation deck railing so tightly her knuckles turned white. "He did it," she whispered. He actually did it. Stone rumbled his agreement. This human has changed everything. Razor's compound eyes focused on the frozen devourer. The creature still lives, but it can no longer function. This human has broken the perfect weapon simply by refusing to be afraid of it. In the Galactic Council section, the 3 delegates were speaking urgently among themselves. David could see them pointing at him, then at their data tablets, then back at him again. The announcer's voice finally returned, though it sounded shaky and uncertain. The human appears to have. The devourer is unable to continue combat. Overseer Voss stormed down from his section toward the arena floor. His face showed a mixture of rage and fear that David found oddly satisfying. "This is impossible," Voss shouted. "No creature can defeat the devourer. This human has cheated somehow." One of the Galactic Council delegates stood and activated her own communicator. Her voice carried clearly across the arena as she addressed Overseer Voss directly. "There was no cheating," she declared. "This human has demonstrated something we had not considered possible. He has shown that courage can overcome even superior force when applied with sufficient intelligence." She turned to look at David, still standing calmly in the center of the arena. "What is your name, human?" "David Reed," he replied. "David Reed, by order of the Galactic Council Emergency Session, you are hereby granted full diplomatic immunity and immediate release from this facility. Furthermore, this demonstration has provided sufficient evidence to classify humanity as a Tier 1 species under interstellar law." The crowd fell silent again, shocked by this unprecedented announcement. "What does that mean?" David asked. The delegate smiled. "It means your species is no longer considered weak or primitive. It means humans will be treated as equals in all galactic affairs. And it means that capturing or enslaving humans is now considered an act of war against a protected species." Overseer Voss's face went pale. The implications of what had just happened were becoming clear. His carefully planned demonstration had backfired spectacularly, transforming humanity from a species to be ignored into one that commanded respect throughout the galaxy. David looked around the arena one final time. The devourer still stood motionless, its perfect systems defeated by an imperfect human who had simply refused to accept the impossible. The cage had indeed burst open. But it was not the creature's cage that mattered. It was the cage of low expectations that had confined human potential for too long. And now that cage lay in ruins, destroyed by a simple act of defiance that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. 3 months later, David stood before the Earth Defense Council in a conference room that had been built specifically for this meeting. Representatives from every major nation sat around a circular table, their faces reflecting a mixture of excitement and concern that had become familiar to him since his return. "The reports from our deep space monitoring stations are confirmed," Admiral Chen announced, reviewing the latest intelligence briefings. 17 different species have initiated first contact protocols with Earth in the past 60 days. They all reference the same thing, footage of your arena fight. David nodded, unsurprised. The recording had spread through galactic networks faster than anyone had predicted. What started as entertainment had become the most watched piece of media in galactic history. "What exactly are they telling us?" asked Dr. Patel, the head of the xenobiology department. "That depends on the species," David replied. "The Crystalline Collective wants to establish trade relations. They are particularly interested in our theoretical physics research. The Talon Empire has proposed a military alliance. They believe humans would make excellent special forces troops. And the others? The others are scared." David brought up a holographic display showing recent diplomatic communications. 3 species have requested permission to establish permanent embassies on Earth, not for trade or alliance, but to monitor what they call the human situation. President Martinez leaned forward in her chair. "Monitor us how?" "They want to make sure we do not become aggressive. Apparently, the galaxy has never encountered a species that combines our level of technology with our refusal to accept defeat. They are not sure what we might do with that combination." Admiral Chen pulled up another display showing military intelligence. "We have been tracking unusual activity in the outer systems. Several alien fleets have taken positions just beyond our sensor range. They are not threatening us directly, but they are clearly watching." "Are we in danger?" Dr. Patel asked. David considered the question carefully. "Not immediately, but we are definitely being evaluated. Every action we take from now on will be scrutinized." by beings who are trying to decide whether humans are a beneficial addition to galactic civilization or a potential threat that needs to be contained. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth had spent centuries dreaming of contact with alien civilizations. No one had imagined that first contact would come in the form of the galaxy, deciding whether humanity deserved to exist. "What do you recommend?" President Martinez asked. "We need to be very careful about how we present ourselves," David replied. "The galaxy saw me refuse to back down from an impossible situation. That impressed them, but it also frightened them. They are wondering if all humans share that trait. Do we?" Admiral Chen wanted to know. David smiled. "What do you think?" The Admiral's expression grew thoughtful. "I think any species that has survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and nuclear weapons probably does not give up easily." "Exactly. And that is what makes this situation both an opportunity and a danger." Dr. Patel brought up her own research files. "I have been analyzing the alien communications we have intercepted. There are two distinct factions forming in the galactic community. One group wants to integrate humans as quickly as possible, believing we can contribute significantly to galactic civilization. The other group wants to limit our expansion and keep us confined to Earth." "What are they afraid of?" President Martinez asked. "They are afraid of what happens when a species that does not accept defeat gains access to galactic-level technology," David explained. "Most civilizations reach a point where they become comfortable with their limitations. They accept that some problems cannot be solved, some enemies cannot be defeated, some barriers cannot be overcome." He gestured toward the window, where Earth's blue sky was visible beyond the conference room. "Humans have never reached that point. We keep trying to solve the unsolvable, defeat the undefeatable, overcome the impossible. The galaxy is not sure what to do with that kind of thinking." Admiral Chen activated another display. "We have been receiving technology offers from various species. Faster-than-light communication, advanced materials, energy weapons, even limited faster-than-light travel. But all of the offers come with conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "Restrictions on how we can use the technology. Agreements not to expand beyond certain boundaries. Promises to submit to galactic oversight of our military development." President Martinez frowned. "They want to control us." "Some of them do," David agreed. "But others genuinely want to help. The problem is that even our potential allies are nervous about giving humans too much power too quickly." Dr. Patel pulled up a new file. "There is something else. We have been monitoring communications between various species, and they are all discussing the same question. What happens when humans encounter their first real enemy in space?" "What do you mean?" "Every species in the galaxy has faced situations where they had to retreat, surrender, or accept partial defeat in order to survive. They want to know what humans will do when faced with a genuinely superior force." David thought back to his time in the arena, remembering the moment when the Devourer had charged toward him. "They want to know if we will back down when backing down is the rational choice." "Will we?" Admiral Chen asked. "I do not know," David admitted, "but I suspect they already know the answer." President Martinez stood and walked to the window. "So what happens now? Do we accept their restrictions and try to build relationships slowly? Or do we assert our independence and risk making enemies?" "We do what humans have always done," David said. "We find a third option that no one else has considered." He activated the room's main display and brought up a proposal he had been working on for weeks. "Instead of accepting integration or isolation, we offer something the galaxy has never seen before, a species that actively helps other civilizations overcome their own limitations." The room studied the proposal carefully. It outlined a plan for Earth to become a center for solving supposedly impossible problems, using human ingenuity to tackle challenges that other species had given up on. "We become the galaxy's troubleshooters," Dr. Patel said, understanding immediately. "Exactly. Instead of being seen as a threat or a junior partner, we position ourselves as the species other civilizations call when they need someone who refuses to accept that a problem cannot be solved." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "It is ambitious, probably dangerous, and completely insane. It is also the most human approach I can imagine," President Martinez added. David smiled. "The galaxy is about to learn something important about our species. We do not just refuse to accept defeat in combat. We refuse to accept defeat in any situation where success is theoretically possible. He looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. They wanted to know what makes humans dangerous. I think we should show them. 6 months later, the first human problem-solving facility opened in orbit around Earth. Within a year, it was receiving requests for assistance from civilizations across the galaxy. Problems that had been considered unsolvable for centuries were being addressed by teams of humans who simply refused to believe that any challenge was truly impossible. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of that change. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest species, but because they were the only species that consistently refused to give up when everyone else had decided success was impossible. The cage had burst open, and the beast that emerged was not a creature of claws and fangs, but an idea that was far more dangerous to the status quo, the idea that anything could be overcome if you were willing to keep trying long enough. And that idea was spreading through the galaxy, one impossible solution at a time. The universe was about to become a much more interesting place.